What's one lost art you wish came back in style?
The art of shame. I wish people could experience shame a little heavier.
We are overfamiliar with shame as a society, and what does this shame strip from us? This is something I've been thinking about a lot since the beginning of this year, actually, since starting this YouTube channel. But these thoughts kind of arose for me again when I was watching an Ocean Vuong interview earlier this week, and he talks about this nonchalant Olympics that's happening in academia at the moment, in which a lot of young students don't want to be seen trying or being effortful. And Ocean Vuong's an amazing author, and I'll put the link for the interview below. But essentially explores the way in which students don't want to be seen trying or being effortful, and it makes it really frustrating as a professor, especially when you're teaching a subject like literature, for instance, or literature-based subjects. A huge amount of literature is yearning, and yearning in a way in which society would consider that yearning shameful, embarrassing, or in a way that it needs to be kept to pages, essentially. But I think outside of academia alone and exploring that frustration, I think we are all over familiar with shame in the sense that we act like that, not just in the way we try to do stuff like uni-wise, but also in the way we live in society, live and exist. And I think this idea of what shame strips from us is just very interesting. And that video and interview contrasting with the Jacob Elordi interview that I watched a while back as well, and they were asking him what's something that you feel like people aren't familiar enough with or is underrated, and he was like, people need to be more familiar with shame again. And I completely disagree. I feel like we are over familiar with shame. I think I've been over familiar with shame for a huge amount of my life, in the sense that shame has dictated the way I live. And it's only until recently, like even with starting this YouTube channel, that it's like, oh, I can do this without the regard of shame in my head. And shame has held me back for so long, and shame has stripped me of things that I feel like I've lived a half life for so long. And it's just really exploring that in this video. But essentially, if you're new here, hi, I'm Sherwin, and this is Sherwin Unfiltered, where I explore media, fashion, politics, and everything in between. But oh my gosh, hi guys, I'm officially sort of back. Okay, maybe not sort of, I'm just officially back. Because like I've been able to be more settled down, and like I've had more time to just do things I really like again, especially like the YouTube channel, and be able to like research in my free time. And I have like a better work-life balance at the moment than I usually do, so there's I think gonna be a lot more videos and a lot more frequent videos. But right now my book of the week is Ocean Vuong, On Earth We Were Briefly Gorgeous, and I was supposed to start reading this like a month ago, but like a month ago I was everywhere, and like I was in a constant place, and like when you're doing so much of life, you just get exhausted. So anytime I'd be on a train, I'd be sleeping. And normally like I'm on a train, I can read and do stuff, but like you're traveling, you're moving stuff around, you're changing like jobs, it's very hectic. But it's been a really good read so far, actually, and I feel like I'm probably going to do a review of this very soon. But great read, and it's really funny how it's Ocean Vuong, and I was like, oh, let me just like watch more of his stuff. And it's as if like my phone knows me, sort of. Like a lot of his interviews came up, which also inspired his videos. So someone was also asking me like my research process and like how do I think of video ideas. Often at times my life inspires the videos, and it's just this very circular motion. Just by the act of living, I'm inspired essentially. And then often at times I'm reading already, and then so anything I read and pick up on, I journal. So one of the things I really think is important to do, not just like, because we talk about consumption of media and reading more and like consuming more media that's intellectual, but it's really important to also review that media, and I think good media deserves to be reviewed anyway. And in that instance, reviewing that media is also means you're coming up with your own takes and things that you think are important, or you think of links because you haven't like had to ask anybody else, what do you think of this thing, essentially. So you come up with these original ideas, quote unquote. Sometimes people have thought about it before, but you've come up with this idea from your head, essentially, that's authentic because something you've thought about, and you make unique links that people haven't made, which makes life a bit more interesting, essentially. But yeah, that's like the huge check-in. But how are you guys as well, actually? And coming off from the last video, because this is like a few days after I've put the last video out, because the comments are blowing up, it's really interesting to see the discourse. And it's not like I don't want to reply, I'm waiting. I don't know, I'm very lazy. I'm a very lazy texter. It's so bad. Like, you can ask people in my personal life, like if you see how many texts that I have like unopened, if you call me I will pick up, kind of thing. But like my messaging skills is it's in the shits. But yeah, back to the video. I really wanted to explore the idea of shame essentially, and what does shame actually mean. So from this definition I got from Cambridge is shame is an uncomfortable feeling of guilt or being ashamed because of your own or someone else's behavior. And I think we often think about shame as a feeling, and it's synonymous to feelings like guilt and embarrassment, and they all kind of orbit in some type of trifecta essentially. But I think shame is also an action, and we can have actions of behavior of shames which hinders us in life, for instance, like hiding away and like cowering away, or this idea of freezing. I think when we think about fear as well as a feeling, fear is also an action. I think shame, fear, embarrassment, anguish, all these negative feelings are very synonymous to each other, and they kind of orbit into each other, and like they kind of bleed into or feed into one another, if that makes sense. Like negativity feeds negativity. But when I think about like fear, for instance, we think about fear, we think about a feeling, but fear is also an action in the sense of fight or flight. Like when you're scared, it's an evolutionary, you have like an evolutionary defense response in which you either fight or you run essentially. And I feel like shame also comes into that as well, and in the way I would just talk about fear and shame as well, because if you think about shame, the definition talks about guilt, but I think shame as well is very synonymous with fear, and this fear of being seen, which is why I think the behaviors of shame are like hiding away. But I think one of the crazy behaviors of shame which is interesting is just freezing as well, because we talk about fight or flight, but we didn't really talk about freeze and like this idea of like being stuck and being stagnant. I think shame can cause stagnation in one's life, and I felt that myself essentially, and especially with starting this YouTube channel, for instance, it's been something I've wanted to do since the beginning of uni. I'm going into my 4th year and final year of uni, and I've only just started to take it seriously in the last year or so. Like I posted like one video that I was just felt ashamed of it, and I just didn't post anything for a bit, and I only started like posting consistently since like February, and sometimes I'm just posting, not posting. And it was very important for me when I started posting this year to get rid of the feelings of shame I had around being seen trying. And I had this very negative connotation in my connotation of myself, for instance, that I think Ocean Vuong was also reflecting in the interview, of that there's a very nonchalantness in which we pursue our dreams right now in modern society, and this fear of being seen, being effortful and trying. I think I was scared of being seen trying and trying to make this work, and not just trying to make this work, because the idea of effort is cringy right now, and not just in your dreams but also in relationships. Like the idea that you care about somebody is cringe. Like you're supposed to do these mind games and stuff, or mind game your dreams as well. Like the less you show you want something, the more you get it. But I also think it was this idea of like, if I flop, everybody knows I flop, everyone's gonna know I failed. But there's a beauty in which when you remove shame from the equation, you can try so much. You can try and try and try and try and begin and reinvent yourself, and it's a really liberating feeling. And that's what I was exploring in my previous video, in which I said, in the silence of acceptance I find liberation. I think we're chasing so much of finding community, where I think you find community by just trying effortlessly, rather than trying effortfully, if that makes sense. So not effortlessly, like you're trying. You find community through the things you actually love doing and like being naturally yourself, rather than I need to find a community and then adjust myself for that community and then do things, where I think it's the other way around essentially. But researching and working on this video, I did a lot less researching than I normally do, and a lot more journaling and introspection, because of the way in which I saw shame. And I was discussing how shame is also an action, not just a feeling, and we have actions of shame such as stagnation and inaction, in the sense that I will procrastinate or do this thing later when I'm less scared or when I feel more ready. But I don't think you're ever going to feel ready and ready to decision. Same thing with the feelings of shame, which like manifest into actions. I think because shame is an action, shame is a taught action as well. Because for us to do something, we have to be taught it or be learnt. So it has to be learnt or be taught essentially. And we're taught from the people around us. And someone who comes from an African household, Nigerian household, we have like a lot of phrases like, shame cover me, shame wear me, like this, like secondhand shame, all of this. And huge amount of the culture, especially if you're a Yoruba person, I don't know about other cultures, and speaking about my own experience, is that there's always this consideration of what will people think about you. Why would you face the public something that's meant to be private, in the sense that obviously I do think things are meant to be private, but in the sense that you're shamed out of empathy, you're shamed out of protection, you're shamed out of things that are important conversations, but you're shamed out of it, like Sorry, my camera is acting up at the moment. But I was saying that shame takes us and strips us of important conversations, and conversations that are crucial to our development, essentially. And so we end up being quite stagnant for a huge amount of our lives. And when you grow up in like a culture around that, where shame is very commonplace, and you're ashamed of, you want to do something else that's not like, that's divergent to what's like usual in your community, like, oh, be a doctor or a lawyer, or you want to do something that's creative, but like you have to try for quite a bit. But it's like, if it's not into success, and if it's not like instantly like boo, then you're ashamed out of doing that thing. Essentially, you're ashamed and you're mocked and you're laughed at for doing that thing, for being different. And so because shame is learned and taught in that way, you kind of have to unlearn it for yourself in adulthood, or you'll be forced recycling the same routines, being like, oh, one day I'm going to be ready, and you'll never be ready. And I think something people really forget is that there's a really beautiful privilege of youth. And I'm not saying you can't do things at other parts of your life. I think you can constantly go for things, but there's a really unique privilege in youth that you'll never get this thing again. Like, youth is quite precious to me. As someone who's in her youth right now, I'm constantly seeing this quite precious. The things I was doing at 16, I can't do at 21, and like the things that I can do at 21, I wasn't able to do at 16. I'm just fighting for your freedom and being able to like do things in your youth when you're young, you're single, you don't have kids, or you don't have the external pressures of like you have a full-time job, you're in uni, like you just have time to like obviously hustle, work, but like also just like really explore things. You don't really get as much free time as you think in adulthood like that. So in a sense, you really want to enjoy this time and soak it off. And I think sometimes shame has stripped me of parts of my childhood, nearly all my childhood essentially, and like parts of my youth now, because I was so scared of being perceived differently. But I think for me to like leave that understanding and be able to like do things like this YouTube channel and like be able to like write and like do content, I've had to go through some sort of ego death. And I'm just going to define what ego death is. And ego death in psychoanalysis, mysticism, and some religions is disappearance of an individual sense of self, or removal of one's perception of oneself as an entity separate from one's social and physical environment. And I want to keep onto the last bit of the removal of yourself from one's social and physical environment. Just because everyone around you is doing one thing doesn't mean you must coexist and basically fall into the crowd and do that thing. I think a lot of shame stems from this fear of being perceived as different, and even just the fear of being perceived at all. When a lot of, for instance, African like societies are very much community based, that was seen as one, essentially, that were seen as one group rather than an individual self, and sticking out is very anyhow. We're not very individualistic, we're very much community based essentially. And so you kind of have to desensitize yourself to that and be like, I don't need to fit in, and I probably shouldn't fit in if my dreams are this big. And you shouldn't be shamed out of your dreams for being bigger or being conventionally different either. I think it's really important to understand those aspects when you're dealing with feelings like shame and embarrassment and fear essentially. And there's this really beautiful phrase said by India Ame, in which she says, allow shame to find no home in your posture, in your dances, in your aura, in your lovemaking sounds, in your dreaming spaces, in your every single desire. And I completely agree. When you evict shame from somewhere that's familiar and you stop going home to shame, you have a space in which you can breathe in. But I also think you have more space to like pursue your dreams essentially. And I'm going back to Ocean Wrong's point in the sense that we are in some kind of nonchalance Olympics in which we're scared to be seen trying and we're scared to be seen effortlessful. But there's a beauty in like trying and striving, and there's a beauty in the process, because I think society, I don't think we're even scared of just being seen trying. I think we're scared of lack of results, which is why I think it's really important to fall in love with the process, because eventually you do things enough times, a result will come out of it. Which is why sometimes as well it feels like everything's happening all at once, which is kind of how I feel right now, in the sense that you've been trying things for so long and suddenly it works, and it's like, holy shit, it works. And it's like you don't really know what to do with yourself essentially. But when you live in a system in which shame constantly exists around you, you don't see that as a possibility or the future. It's like, it works for the people but it can never work for me. What's so special about me? Which is why you kind of need to go through some ego death and center yourself. And centering yourself and decentering people around you, like your parents at times, like academia at times, like sometimes just think about you and this idea of having a true self, for instance. I think something that also shame also does is outsource ourselves too much at times. Like something I've had to catch myself doing is like, oh, do you think this outfit is nice? Do you think this thing is nice? Because I'm someone that overthinks a lot, so I'm constantly unsure, like, oh, should I do this thing? But the more in which you press yourself to do that, to think for yourself, the more in which you can leave feelings of shame behind. Because if I pick the wrong thing, it's gonna look weird. I'm ashamed of picking the wrong thing, but you have so much choice. You have so much time to like pick the quote unquote right thing, or is that even a right thing essentially? But the great thing is you can pick. But shame stops us from either just not picking ever, or picking what we think is wrong and just living in regret. And I never really want to live in regret like that, essentially. So it's this mixture of like freeing yourself, ego death, and like just pursuing the things you love, essentially. But this video is like a lot shorter than my usual videos, but I'm really glad that it is, because like you can't shame the shameless. That's me. But like it's been really interesting in the sense that since I've disregarded other people's opinions and shame, the things I've been able to do, like in my personal life, community wise, finding people that like you. So people that actually like you will not shame you. And that's something I feel like a lot of people think sometimes when people are like, oh, tough love, harsh love. Yes, but there's a time and a place, and sometimes people are just horrible people. And sometimes, as a Nigerian especially, we're very blunt people, and we're used to a bluntness that's not just blunt but just rude and lack of consideration of people's feelings. So it's like, oh, coming from a place of love, no, you're shaming somebody out of something that because you don't think it's possible, which is also really interesting. I was gonna end this video, but now just eureka moment. I think at times shame also leads to anger. I've had people be angry at me because I lived my life in a way they didn't think life was possible to live in that way. So there's some frustration in which, oh, I could have done that too, why didn't I live my life in this way? And the way you're living your life is quote unquote everything I've been taught is wrong. I drink, I party, I do uni, I somehow am a mix of conundrums. As someone who's quote unquote a party girl, I'm also sort of intellectual. How does that happen? How do you exist? How do you exist in a world where you do not center marriage and children? How do you exist? And how do you move in a way that you're not in like a sort of pressure cooker from everything you've been taught, essentially? I think it's really interesting. And I have empathy towards people. I have grace actually towards people, because like I also was angry at myself at one point and angry towards the world for not finding a way in which I wanted to live. But on that point, I think this has been a really reflective video. I think less on research and society, okay, society on some level, but just more introspection and sometimes the things that we don't think, we really don't realize that comes automatic to us, but we shame ourselves out of things we like, and like, oh, that's so childish, oh, I shouldn't do this, oh, what will people think? I think we shame ourselves out of this perception. And I also just think we don't have to share everything online. I don't share everything online, you don't have to. So in that way you remove that element of outside perspective and this whole surveillance culture of what will people think of me, essentially. But if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, please comment again. I love the comments, even though I'm very lazy to reply. I will actually reply. I'm giving myself homework to do this week. I'm going to reply properly and get on there and like. But thank you for watching, essentially. See you guys next week again. See you guys soon. Bye.